I am back here to introduce a topic that everybody is interested in, which is getting funded, but how to find the perfect VC. We're going to be talking about VC and founders relationship, because finding the right VC is like finding the right partner. Will you still want the same things 5 or 10 years from now? Are you going to work well together? Are you going to be driven towards the same direction? So to talk about it's a match, finding the right VC, we're going to have Janet Bannister, partner at Rio Ventures, Ben Brabyn, head of Level 39, and Carlos Espinal, co-founder and partner at Seedcamp, moderated by Gonçalo de Vasconcelos from Syndicate Room. Welcome on stage and a round of applause to them.
I guess.
Am I supposed to sit on the?
Sit down one more? Or?
Right. I'll sit
Yeah.
here.
We can all sit together. Come
We
here.
can all sit
Let's
together.
all just sit together.
I think there's plenty of room
be-
there. Hello, 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 everybody.
Feels too far away.
Welcome. Right. So my name is Gonçalo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Syndicate Room, and I write for Forbes about entrepreneurship and fintech, as well being a fellow at the University of Cambridge on entrepreneurship. And today we're here now to talk about VCs and how to choose a good VC. Right, many will have heard that getting VC money is actually like a marriage. I actually claim that it's more like a forced marriage because let's face it, we're all doing it for the money. And to make sure that we know how to make it a happy marriage, I have this excellent panel here with me. From far to the left, Janet, Carlos, and Ben. Janet, could you tell us 2 minutes about yourself and your background, please?
Absolutely. So I'm a partner of Rio Ventures. Rio Ventures is a Canadian-based early-stage venture capital firm. We've been around for about 11 years, and we have about 200 companies in our portfolio. We invest in a wide range of companies, as I said, primarily at the seed stage. Before I joined Rio Ventures, I did a variety of other things, including spending about 4 years with McKinsey & Company. I also spent several years in Silicon Valley with eBay in the early days of eBay, and then did some entrepreneurial things in Canada before joining Rio Ventures 4 years ago.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Carlos.
Yeah, so my name is Carlos, one of the 2 partners in Seedcamp that started the mission 11 years ago now. 280 companies later, we have 2 new partners that joined us, and looking to continue to actively invest in Europe.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Ben.
I'm Ben Brabyn. I'm head of Level 39, which is a community of about 200 fintech, cybersecurity, smart cities, and retail technology companies based in Canary Wharf in London.
Fantastic. Now, we are here to talk about how to choose the right VC. But I can guarantee you that with all the experience that we all have in terms of dealing with entrepreneurs, most of us will be thinking, how on earth do I find a VC? Any VC will do, right? Ben, with your experience at Level 39, is choosing a VC a luxury that most startups can't really afford?
Well, certainly it's not always easy to find any VC, let alone the right VC. And you use the analogy of a marriage. It's worth considering that sometimes the least bad option is to stay single. But of course, no entrepreneur really wants to hear that. So I think the advice that I'd give based on what I've observed in Level 39 is that patience is your strongest virtue in this search for the right relationship. Patience and confidence, and perhaps most importantly of all, a readiness to make sure that you send out the right sort of signals so that the right kind of VCs come towards you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Janet, you are obviously from the other side of the table, investing into companies. How often do you find yourself competing for those deals? And when you do so, what do you tell them to make sure you win that deal?
Absolutely. So the Canadian ecosystem is really on an amazing roll right now. Toronto is, in particular, is doing very well. And a quick shout out that Collision next year is going to be in Toronto. But as a result, we have definitely seen more foreign VCs coming into Canada. And so there is more competition than we have historically faced. And so I think the three things that we talk about with our entrepreneurs that I would encourage all the entrepreneurs in this room to really think about is one of the terms, are the terms entrepreneurial, are they a market, etc. It's certainly if you're a first-time entrepreneur, really understand the meaning of every single term in the term sheet and in your legal documents. Second thing is the value that we add to the company. So again, if you're talking to VCs, really understand specifically how they work with the companies. And then the third thing is, what is the philosophy of the VC when times go bad? How do they stick by the entrepreneurs? Are they looking out for the entrepreneurs' best interest in the tough times?
Fantastic. And Carlos, you've seen many companies in our portfolio raising money from VCs at a later stage. What advice do you give them when picking VCs? What should they be looking for?
So I'm going to repeat some of the stuff Ben said because it is in effect a form of long-term relationship. So maybe what we can do is two things. One, we can park the relationship during the courtship phase, and then the relationship once you've taken the money. So the courtship phase, it comes down to alignment of both interests, but alignment of a speciality. So for example, alignment of interest would be that both of you feel like you've gotten a fair deal, that you feel happy, because once the relationship starts and that relationship starts on a sour foot, it's very hard to recover. And then after that, it's making sure that you continually invest in that relationship. And I was having a chat last night with some investor friends about the 4 phases of relationships with co-founders or with partners. I think the same thing applies to VCs. 4 phases. First one is the honeymoon phase. This VC is going to sort my life out. He's going to open up every door. This is amazing. Second phase, they kind of promised some things, but they didn't quite deliver. The third phase is when you're fighting over something, your pro rata, the investment. And then the fourth phase is when you've resolved all these things and you actually realize that they've actually helped you out quite a bit, or you never made it past the third phase and it's just negative. But hopefully what you can do is by picking the right person early on, you can go through those phases smoothly.
Okay, and so when they go through the honeymoon phase, all sounds very nice and well, and then suddenly you hit part of the business that you actually things are not going quite according to the business plan that you presented to the VC. Is that really how do you analyze before you go into that deal that's going to be the right VC at that time? Because let's face it, any startup will hit that wall at some point. Carlos, I don't know if you...
So I think, first of all, you should feel that your relationship with an investor is a philosophical and moral and value-based alignment, not necessarily an accountability of exactly how things are going to play out. Like if you draw a line of where you are to where you want to be, the reality is it's going to look like this. It's going to be like a big zigzag. So the question is, do you want somebody on your journey who's going to hold you accountable to sticking to a linear path, which is almost impossible? Or do you want somebody who has the empathy, who's got the skills to help you hire the right people, perseverance and assistance to walk you through and be there for you as things go bad? And that's really kind of what you need to be looking for. And you can do that through conversations, talking to other portfolio CEOs that they've invested in to get a feeling for how they react under stress.
I think just to add on to that, I think one of the most important things for an entrepreneur looking to work with a VC is to talk not just to the companies that have done well, but also to the companies that have really struggled, so that you can understand not just the best case, but how does that VC react when times are tough, when milestones aren't met.
So is it a matter of carrying out your own due diligence on the VC just the same way they are?
Absolutely.
And tell me, how realistic, Janet, do you think that sometimes expectations from the entrepreneurs are on the VCs? Because let's face it, you're a busy person, you're flying everywhere, you're finding new deals, you're supporting the existing deals. Do you ever come across situations where the expectation is just unrealistic? They want you to be working in the business rather than just providing a supporting role?
So they're sorry, can you repeat the question? When they're supporting the business?
Expectations.
Oh, expectations.
Yeah.
So I would say absolutely. It's very important that you set expectations at the beginning and then that you continue to set expectations. I think also my philosophy as a VC is, and I would encourage founders to look at this, is that the VC is never going to know all the answers to your questions. They're never going to be able to introduce you to all of the people that you need to meet. But hopefully they can provide an introduction to the people who you do need to meet, or that they will provide you with the guidance that you need in order to get to the right people. But that being said, at the same time, you need to understand that the VC is not the only person who can be there, who can provide that support. And as a founder, think about your whole network of advisors and of supporters and all of the people who are there to support you and who you can learn from.
I mean, actually, that's one of the great things Level 39 has done, is building that community of very focused for your sector.
And Ben, so in terms of that community that you built on Level 39, how important is the community in terms of weeding out the bad actors and actually making the good actors stand out and be the ones that everyone wants to work with?
Well, I'm very glad by what both Carlos and Janet have said, because I think it does sort of put into the context of the whole activity of the entrepreneur the relationship they have with their investors. And communities like Level 39, of course, are environments where you have around you, and I would suggest that as an entrepreneur, your core competence has to be building relationships. It's very important who you build relationships with. And around you in a community like ours, you'll find peers from whom you can learn a great deal. You'll find customers. You'll find, you might find regulators in some cases. You'll certainly find investors. And you'll find experts who might dip in and out with particular technical or regulatory expertise, for example. And having ability to balance your time with all of those people, frankly, improves the nature of your relationships with all of the others. So it's a kind of virtuous circle. And of course, investors play a very important part in that. But the entrepreneurs who engage most productively and successfully with investors are often able to do so because they bring fresh external perspectives, which are as much of value to the investor as to the entrepreneur themselves.
Fantastic. And this is a question for all the three of you, because you will all have different perspectives on this. From 1 to 10, how important is it to get top-tier VC in your cap table? Janet.
So, okay, I'll start. I would say maybe a 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, and the reason I say that is I'm not sure that there's such a thing as a top-tier VC overall. I mean, there are VCs that just say, oh yeah, these are top-tier. But I think really what it comes down to is who is the best VC for you as an entrepreneur and for your company. And a VC that's the best partner for one company may or may not be the best VC for your company. And so it really depends. And I think that when we paint certain firms as being the best, it does a disservice to the entrepreneurs because, as I said, and maybe perhaps to the VC firms, because you as a founder really need to figure out what do you need from a VC, what are your expectations, and then go out and find both the partner and the VC that best will meet those needs.
Carlos?
I agree with that 100%.
Dito.
I think if I may, I'll borrow, Carlos, your 2 points. And I think rather than asking what tier is a particular investor in, I'd ask instead, how can they help me get from one point to the other? How can they, in other words, and this I think is a key point, how can they help me to bring other people and organizations around this mission which we share? How can they help me to achieve the relationships of trust with all of the people I'm going to need to get to that end point?
Okay. And another sticking point there is that actually, within VCs, you have different partners that have different expertise, different personalities, different willingness to support. How important is the partner more important than the VC itself, or the other way around? Carlos.
Well, the funny thing is that it's a little bit more complicated than that, because every single fund will have a different structure for how they interface with a company, right? So some funds will have scouts, and the title won't be scout. It'll be some team member, and it'll have a different title. And I don't want to put titles there because that can sometimes be offensive, but just assume there's a layer of people who are out there meeting companies and not necessarily involved in the decision process, but punt the company to the next phase. And then there's other funds that are partner only. Like, for example, one of my friends, Sitar from Connect Ventures, are a partner only fund. And so those are 2 distinct modes of operating. Seed Camp is not only a multi-partner fund, but the way we operate is multi-partner. In other words, there isn't one deal for one partner. Rather, we contribute in different ways. And the way that we work is we have like small WhatsApp groups, and we work with our companies in those small WhatsApp groups, and all of us are on it. And so whenever somebody has something intelligent to add, we all work that way. So I think it's more about what you want and what kind of relationship you want, and investigating what kind of relationship those funds have, because some of them are, there's one person who starts a conversation, then it gets moved on to another person, then there's two people involved, and then there's an investment committee, and then there's a partnership, and then you get assigned an external advisor. That's one model. And then the extreme other model is you have one person who takes you the entire journey, and then there's something in the middle, which is kind of what we are, just a mix of partnership that works with you individually.
I think that one thing that's an important question to ask when you are assessing VCs is understand how the VCs are compensated. Because there's a big difference. In some firms, VCs are compensated primarily on the company, based on on how well the companies do, that they lead the investment for and that they foster. And there are other VC firms where the compensation is split equally, so regardless of which partner brings in a particular company, all of the partners benefit equally. And those two different models create very different dynamics. And so it's fine if a partner of a VC firm says, oh, don't worry, you'll have access to the whole partnership. That's fine, but really to try to understand if that's real or not, understand how people are compensated.
I think I would just add as well, if you can possibly spend some time with people who've had a long relationship with the people that you're planning to get into a relationship with, then you'll get a clear view, and it'll flush out some of those questions of incentive. Yeah.
I think the other important thing is to understand how decisions are made at a VC firm. And so if you have an initial partner who's leading you around, if you're planning to get follow-on funding, often those decisions for the next follow-on funding are based on a voting system with multiple partners. So it's important as well to build relationships with all of the partners, or at least other partners within the firm, so that when it comes time for a voting decision on your company for follow-on funding, other partners are familiar with you.
So entrepreneurs, usually they don't have the benefit that you have of really knowing the ecosystem, the other VCs and so on. From the outside, if you read any VC webpage, they all sound the same. They all add value, they're all great, they're all very entrepreneurial friendly. I'm an entrepreneur. How on earth do I distinguish between them, other than just having coffees with all of them, which, by the way, will be almost impossible to achieve if you're an entrepreneur and you're still not quite at the VC stage? How do I do that?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to curate your list, right? One of them is you have relationships with other founders, and there's word of mouth, right? So to some extent, you have a list. There's like an open source list that you can download. You just type in like list of VC investors in your geography. Somebody created a Google Sheet, and then you just talk to your friends and find out which ones have a good reputation, and you start from there. And then, of course, once you start talking to angel investors and you've received angel investment, they'll obviously have their own list of people that they relate to. So I think at the end of the day, it's through relationships, and especially if you have existing shareholders, they probably have good working relationships with downstream capital. So they're going to give you insight as to who they would rather work with, and there's nothing better than having a cap table that gets along rather than one that's quite divided.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's all nice. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So that's all nice and well, but I'm running a business. I'm running out of cash. If I have a funding round in 12 months' time, then you'll have seen these at level 39. Many companies, they have their burn rate. They will need cash at some point in the near future. How early do you see them, or the successful ones particularly, engaging with VCs? Is it a couple of months before? Is it 6 months before? Is it?
Well, it's a great question. And I think identifying the start of that process is itself perhaps slightly misleading. This is a process which is continuous. It never stops. So it's hard to identify a particular discrete start to it as well. As soon as you have identified an opportunity, as soon as you start thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur, I suggest you are already beginning to form the expectations of your investors, and not just in the next round as well. What you're really doing, of course, is you're constructing a reputation. And the relationships, which Carlos alludes to, of course, go both ways. You're trying to map out who might fit with you, but you're also creating a persona with which they'll have to engage as well. So even from the very beginning, the way in which you go about your search, how you treat other people, their time in particular, and advising you, is critical to determining which investors will eventually find their way to you. So I would say don't have a clock running and say, okay, we're 6 months out, it's time to start. Start immediately. And if you're ready to get started as soon as you leave this room, well, do. In fact, maybe check out the people sitting next to you before you leave.
It does. Yeah. And Janet, just from the other side, from your perspective, how early do you start getting to have a look, have coffees with those entrepreneurs before you actually sign the check?
Yeah, so I think it's very important for founders to build those relationships with the VCs as early as possible. And I will have coffees and meet with people from the very early stages, even when they're just starting out. Because it's sort of like if we're from an investor standpoint, it's a lot easier to invest in a business that you have seen over time. It's a lot easier, you get a better sense of something if you see a movie rather than a photograph. And so similarly, if I have seen a business progress over a year, then I understand that business. I understand how quickly they move. I understand how they make their decisions much better than a company that comes in cold to present the first time. And so I would say to all the entrepreneurs in the room, you are always fundraising. And one thing that I sometimes hear from CEOs is, they feel that fundraising is something sort of different, and they really want to focus on running their business. And they see fundraising as sort of as a necessary evil. And I would advise you to say, hey, what, actually, fundraising is one of the most important jobs that you have to do as a CEO. Embrace it and do it continually, be developing those relationships.
Fantastic. And just as we are terminating, just very quickly, one question from each one of you that an entrepreneur absolutely should be asking the VC before signing the dotted line. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Go on, Carlos.
Can I, if you haven't already, but would love to speak to one of your portfolio company CEOs, just to understand how you work.
Sorry?
Just to understand how you work. I would ask, hey, can I speak to one of your portfolio CEOs to see how you work?
Okay.
I would say really understand the dynamics of the partnership and how decisions are made within the partnership.
And I think I would ask to talk through a really difficult case that they'd worked on in the past. I'd like to know most of all how they deal not with the easy parts of a relationship, but with the harder parts.
Okay, fantastic. And just picking up on what you said, what do you ask the portfolio company?
What do we ask the portfolio company as a
So
question?
if you were an entrepreneur and you were introduced to the portfolio company as you asked the VC to be introduced, then what do you ask them? What do you learn from them?
Well, presumably if they gave you somebody, it's a little different than if you picked out somebody, because obviously there's a little bit of bias there. But usually it'd be like, walk me through kind of the difficult situation and how the investor helped you through it or managed through it or how they reacted. Because really that's the best thing is when you're going through a hard time, is that person there for you?
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. Please join me in appreciating the panel for the expertise. And great fun. Thank you very much. Janet, Carlos, Ben, great to have you here. Thank you.
Got you.